the change of command ceremony when he assumed his position as Sector Commander of San Diego and Captain of the Port of San Diego. That same day was the same day we actually adopted the Coast Guard cutter sear. Subsequent to that, we've gone through the change of command of the OIC, officer in charge. So we're quite linked with it, and I just happen to share with the captain. We're spending more time on the Coast Guard base than we are necessarily in the Navy bases. So the exciting opportunities, they're so acceptable to us, and it really is proving to be a tremendous relationship. By way of that, I'd like to say a couple things about the captain. You might wonder, he leads the operations for the maritime safety, security, and the environmental protection. The area is staggering. It comes from the north part of the Mexican border and goes all the way up to San Mateo Point. And offshore, offshore by 200 miles. Can you imagine the enormity of this? Now, that doesn't necessarily attend to the fact that he's fixed wing and he's got rotary type, he's got acid base that are really enormous. And the interactivity with the other agencies are really a testimony to the strength of the Coast Guard. So it's really very exciting. He comes very well educated, not educated, and you'll see it from his bio in the masthead. But I'd like to point out also that he's got 3,400 hours in fixed and rotary, and he's actually got credentials for the airline transfer pilot credentials. So very, very talented individual. He is married to Patrice. Unfortunately, we don't have Patrice here today, but you have 3 lovely children, I understand. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give Captain Buzzella.
Well, thanks for the very nice intro. Can you hear me okay? Yes. All right. Well, I am Captain Joe Buzzella, I'm the Sector Commander of Coast Guard Sector of San Diego, also the Captain of the Port, and I wear all kinds of hats that are given to me by Congress, and I'll talk about those later. It's a great day to be in Palm Desert, Palm Springs. I've never been here, so driving here today, I didn't know what to expect. I came through the mountains, and then I saw paradise, and I thought, wow, I'm coming back with my wife here soon. I'm going to show her around, and I got some good gouge over here from the table over here on where to go, where to eat, what have you. You know, I've been serving in the Coast Guard since 1986. Been all over the country. Served up in the Northeast, off of San Fran, obviously San Diego, the Great Lakes, and I'll tell you, everywhere I've gone, we've had a relationship with the Navy League. When I was in Traverse City, I'll tell you, it was amazing. We had an air facility up north of Chicago, and the folks would go over there from Labor Day to Memorial Day. And it was the Navy League that would greet them, our troops, when they were standing up the air facility, put on a big barbecue, a recognition event for the top posties, just absolutely first class all the way. So my impression, my gratitude goes out to the Navy League and for all you do and for the support of for the Coast Guard, along with the Navy and the Marine Corps. So my last assignment, I was in Washington, D.C. I had gone to the National War College after my command in Traverse City, and then they assigned me as a personal advisor, strategic advisor to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I worked for General Dempsey and then General Dunford. I know we got Marines in here, we got one Army guy here, so I got to serve with both those guys. I traveled around the globe with both the chairmen. It was the hardest job I'd ever been in because he's the primary military advisor to the President, National Security Council, and the Secretary of Defense. And as a Coast Guardsman, you know, I had to go interview for this job, and the first question they asked me is, hey, tell us how the Iraqi invasion contributed, or how the Arab Spring and the Iraqi invasion, how the Iraqi invasion contributed to the Arab Spring. And I looked at him, and so you want to ask me something about the Arctic? You know, transnational organized crime, stuff I've worked on? And they said, no, answer the question. So I put my best war college hat on and gave him an answer, walked out thinking there's no way they're going to give me that job. And I got the call. And then I met with General Dempsey, and then he gave me his expectations, and we went to work. The things we worked on were not Coast Guard items. I worked on very complex issues. General Dempsey would mention, he always said, he called it 2-2-2-1. And what he meant was two big powers, China and Russia, we had to deal with, and then two lesser powers, Iran and North Korea. Then we had ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and then the big growing threat that's coming, and that's still evolving, is cyber, and we're still trying to wrap our minds around that. So I was busy, working 7 days a week. On top of that, we had the Ebola crisis, and I learned quite a bit. But as a Coast Guardsman, I brought in a Homeland Security perspective that I think he enjoyed, and I think we helped him out quite a bit. But very busy. I took over San Diego on January 29th. I lived down at Point Loma Lighthouse. Has anybody been out to Point Loma Lighthouse? You've been out there? Oh, a lot. Great. So, a beautiful area. A little background on that. So they built the first one in 1854 at the top of the mountain. And a good Coast Guard planning. When the fog rolled in, you couldn't see the lighthouse. So that continued to guide mariners for many years, and then finally after 1891 they built the one where I live, which is down on the point there. And there's 3 homes out there, and then in 1913 they built the Sector Commander's Home, which they didn't call it the Sector Commander's Home, then it was called the Commanding Officer's Home. And so I'm living in that house now. And all of you are always welcome if you ever want to come down and have a reception. We'll have a nice sunset cocktail reception. The sunsets are quite interesting. But out there, the lighthouse keepers lived also, and they maintained the lighthouses. They kept them going. It was very isolated. So back in those days, they had water catch basins. They had farm fields going. They had animals. They had to provide for themselves. A lot different today. We have actually running water out there now. But also, some of you may know that, and you may not know that, of the first 2 homes that were built, Top Gun was filmed. The greatest naval aviation movie ever made, right? No. So they actually filmed part of the movie out there. So Maverick, this is after Goose and Maverick eject out of their aircraft. They go into the water. Do you know who pulled them out of the water? The U.S. Coast Guard. A lot of people don't notice that. But the H-3 came in. That was the turning point for me. I was in high school at that point, and I said, I'm doing that. And of course, I get questions. Really, it was that one little scene that caused you to want to go in the Coast Guard, not all those F-14s flying around. But yeah, actually it was. And I'd grown up in Miami. I'd seen them flying the Coast Guard aircraft around, so I said, that's what I'm going to do. But anyways, Maverick shows up. He's all shaken up. He goes to hit the commanding officer's home, and he talks. The commanding officer's name is Viper. So he goes to the home. It's still there. We have a Coast Guardsman living there now. And Viper tells him he has a confidence problem, but he has enough points to graduate. So he gets his whites on the next day, and he goes and graduates. But living there, the reason I'm telling you the story is my daughter, who is now at the University of Arizona, when we moved there, before she went to school, she says, hey Dad, can we watch that movie? Well, I hadn't seen that movie in 30 years. I had this fond memory of this movie. I wish I had never seen it again. Because in the movie, I realized, wow, I'm going to get a lot of questions about this Top Gun thing, this movie being made out there, and I'm going to probably have to dispel some rumors. So let me dispel a few. Aviators, and I'm a naval aviator, born and trained at Pensacola. We don't take showers at the same time, put little tight towels on, and sit around a locker room snapping our teeth at each other. It doesn't happen. And then we get out, we get into our business. Second thing, we don't put on overly or very tight jeans and white t-shirts with leather flight jackets and play volleyball with our dog tags hanging out. It doesn't happen. We wear shorts and dress normal. So if you watch that movie, just please remember my little message here, because we got to keep the image of aviators, naval aviators, going. But there's a lot of history there. But I was asked today to speak a little bit about what the Coast Guard does outside of search and rescue. Well, for me to start, I want to give you a little history. The Coast Guard was formed on August 4th, 1790 by then Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton, probably one of our best founding fathers, and probably one that's overlooked. Well, I guess not so much anymore. They're doing a play right now, don't they? I think think it's like $300-400 a ticket just to get to see it. Hopefully that price comes down. I'd like to see it. But you know, we just finished this year. We just completed our 226th year of service as a military service. But Alexander Hamilton, under George Washington as president, he was the Secretary of Treasury. We didn't have any funds coming into the country. We needed to fund a new government. So he created in fact, we started out as the Revenue Cutter Service, and they were a bunch of cutters charged along the coast with stopping inbound traffic from overseas to collect tariffs so we could fund our newly formed government. And so President George Washington signed the Tariff Act back in the day of 1790, the construction of 10 vessels to enforce federal tariffs and trade laws, and to also prevent illegal smuggling, which we're still involved in today. And so the U.S. Revenue Cutter Service was born, and Alexander Hamilton, who, if you read his book by McCullough, I don't know if anyone's read it here, Complete Genius, he knew that to have a strong nation, you didn't start with building a strong military, you built with a strong economy. And it's the economy that we enjoy today that allows us to have the very strong instruments of power we enjoy, the diplomatic, the economic, the information, and of course the military. But we have, the Coast Guard has broad authorities. And in 1915, the Revenue Cutter Service was combined with the U.S. Lighthouse Service, with the Life-Saving Service, and morphed together into what we know today, what you know as the U.S. Coast Guard. And we are one of the 5 armed forces of the United States. A lot of folks don't realize that, but we are a military service. And there's a reason why we're not under DOD. We are a law enforcement military service. We have law enforcement authorities, which means we can make arrests and seize property. We can arrest Americans, we can arrest foreigners, and we can seize property also. And so on purpose, we are not under DOD, because DOD cannot do that. Now, if there's a declaration, a congressional declaration of war, they tell me I had to memorize this at the Coast Guard Academy, that we become the hard nucleus about which the Navy forms in time of war. Not really true. What we do is we become an arm to the Department of the Navy, like the Marine Corps, the Navy, and then the Coast Guard. Will you see another congressional declaration of war going forward? I don't know. It's hard to tell. I mean, Congress doesn't like giving up powers anymore to the president, but we do still go to war without the declaration. So we'll probably stay under the Department of Homeland Security going forward. But we fought in every war since 1790. We've been in the Middle East. Heck, we have a contingency over there, specialized forces now. Matter of fact, when the Iranians grabbed our Navy sailors, what was that, a couple years ago? And you saw them on their knees with their hands. It was the Coast Guard that was launched out to go save them, and then they were called back for political purposes. But we were there, and we were going into the fight to get them back. And we've been everywhere. We're in World War II. Matter of fact, our Medal of Honor winner, Douglas Monroe, saved a lot of Marines off Guadalcanal, died doing it, and was awarded the Medal of Honor. We also just got back our last missing in action Coast Guardsman in Vietnam. Jack Whitaker, he was shot down trying to save a bunch of airmen, but came under heavy fire, was killed, and his aircraft crashed. They found the aircraft, and we just brought him home a few years ago. So that was a victory for the Coast Guard. We also, this year, it's another great year, we're celebrating our 100th anniversary of Coast Guard aviation. So that's what I'm wearing up here. It's a great year. We're proud of that. Elmer Stone became our first Coast Guard aviator in 1916. And for you Navy guys, it was Elmer Stone that was on the crew that did the transatlantic flight with the Navy. He was one of the pilots on the NC-4. He also, some of these jet jocks don't like to admit it, but it was Elmer Stone who was instrumental in developing the catapult steam system for aircraft carriers. A lot of folks don't realize that, but it was a Coast Guardsman who helped design that, and that's quite a testament for our service. But fast forward today, we're at Coast Guard Sector San Diego. In 1934, it was stood up as an air detachment. Elmer Stone, our first aviator, was the commanding officer. And then in April 1937, Air Station San Diego became a permanent air station in San Diego. And then after September 11th, we were transferred from the Department of Transportation. So we started out as Treasury, and we were moved over to the Department of Transportation. And then after 9/11, we became a member, one of the components of the Department of Homeland Security. And in 2004, Coast Guard Air Station San Diego was turned into Coast Guard Sector San Diego as part of the 9/11 construct to keep our borders, our maritime borders safe. And now there's 37 sectors that go from top to bottom, or bottom to top, on each coast, and also in Hawaii and Alaska. And that's how we've broken up the Coast Guard to make sure that we are properly addressing each region of the United States. So at Sector San Diego, I got 350 active duty personnel, 150 reservists, and 600 Coast Guard auxiliaries. Any auxiliaries in here? Probably not in Palm Desert. You'd be amazed where they are. They're everywhere. But it's the premier volunteer organization in the Coast Guard, and we could not do our job without the Coast Guard auxiliary. They give up their boats, their aircraft. We pay the gas, we pay some of the maintenance, but they volunteer their time. They're at the unit right now, standing watch and helping us do our job. Matter of fact, this weekend we didn't have a camera operator available to look. We have sensors looking out on the maritime borderline, so we called up the auxiliary. They provided some volunteers, and he busted a bunch of smugglers coming in. And saw him on the sensors, made the phone call, and we got him. So it's just amazing what the volunteers are doing for us today. But my area of responsibility is fairly large. As mentioned, it starts from the maritime borderline, goes all the way up to Dana Point, just south of LA, and then I have the entire state of Arizona and the southern parts of Utah and New Mexico. Utah and Nevada. I have Lake Havasu, Lake Powell, Lake Mead, the Colorado River, the Hoover Dam. All that falls under my responsibility, and we are out there, especially in the summer months, patrolling and enforcing regulations, making sure folks are safe. Matter of fact, we stood up our presence 2 years ago, went from 7 fatalities on just one lake to 0 because we stood up our presence. And so we're out there, and again, the auxiliaries are helping us out and getting that job done. At the air station, we have we have 4 H-60 helicopters. I have 4 tactical fast response boats, 4 Coast Guard cutters, a fleet of vehicles, and all kinds of cool gear to get the job done. We have hundreds of cameras. I have what we call an operations center, joint harbor operations center that's very, very high tech, and we're watching the internal parts of the port, and then we have sensors watching the maritime borderline. So nothing's coming across. Well, if they do, they are coming across, but nothing's getting by us. So these sensors are pretty high tech, and we're picking up the heat signatures and the movement pretty quick. So these folks are getting a little desperate now, and they're pushing themselves further offshore, taking higher risks. Matter of fact, we had a recent case about a month ago that's concerned me a little bit. A fisherman 30 miles off of Point Loma came across a jet ski partially submerged. It was non-operational, and there were three Mexicans on board. 2 of them were migrants, and 1 was a smuggler. They were hypothermic. They were going to expire probably within hours, and we launched the fleet, and they're safe today. But they're taking higher risks now that we're choking the port pretty good. And they're going further offshore. And so are the drug runners. They're taking great risks. And they're going 200-300 miles offshore in heavy seas to try to land their drugs north of San Francisco. So, it's a different time now. Because we've gotten so good at what we do, the adversary is now changing their tactics. So a little bit about what we do, what I do, what the sector does, outside of search and rescue. So a lot of folks know me also as the captain of the port. That's a big responsibility. I'm an aviator. A lot of folks go, well, you got aviator wings. Why are you the captain of the port? Well, it really comes down to, at this level, it's about leadership. I've got a team of experts, but I have to get the job done, and I'm tasked with making sure that everybody's working together, working with our interagency partners, the DoD, federal, state, and local, all in unison. It's a unit. It's a coalition of the willing, and we got to keep it moving so we can keep the homeland secure and continue to save lives. But I have strong authorities given to me by Congress. I'm in charge as captain of the port, protecting our ports and waterways. I'm responsible for the security and safety of the port, safe passage of commerce vessels. We conduct ports, waterways, and coastal security missions, which we're looking for any nefarious actors, i.e. terrorists, trying to do any harm to our infrastructure like the Coronado Bridge, etc. But just to give you an idea on the commerce side, a lot of folks think we're search and rescue, but I'm in charge of commerce security. So coming through the port of San Diego, we have over 2 billion bananas that come through every year. And I have to regulate those terminal facilities. They got to get dropped off somewhere. So there's security requirements that we have to enforce to keep the bananas healthy, because there's bad people that want to do bad things to our food, believe it or not. 35 to 38,000 cars come through the port every month. That's our 24th Avenue terminal, and that keeps us pretty busy. That's a big area that my Coast Guardsmen are working to make sure that they work on that, to make sure that terminal is kept safe and kept secure. This year we're going to see about 75 cruise ships come through. Next year it's going to be 110. But a lot of folks don't realize that when that cruise ship, if you're on a San Diego cruise ship going outbound, you're going to, if you look over the side, you're going to see Coast Guard tactical vessels with 50 cows, guys heavily armed, escorting that cruise ship out the port to make sure that no nefarious actors are successful in carrying out a maritime attack on an outbound cruise ship. That's our nightmare scenario, and so we're determined not to let it happen. There's a lot of folks on those cruise ships. I also have the authority to close the port. Now, if I close that port, and I have that authority, I better stand by for the calls from Congress, from my bosses. I better have a darn good reason, because as soon as I do that, then the dollar signs start adding up. It costs millions of dollars a day to shut down a port. Why would I shut a port down? Well, it could be because of an attack, terrorist attack, or a major oil spill where oil's all over the port and we have to effect a response. It's just not safe to go through there. Those would be reasons, and I would be justified to do it. We also are responsible for maintaining aids and navigation. So all those green and red buoys that you see, that's Coast Guard's been out there. They're doing that. I also, the other hats I wear, I'm the federal on-scene commander for the area. So it's kind of like the fire chief. If there is a major oil spill or a chemical spill in the port, I take control of it. It becomes mine. All the interagency partners fall under me, and I will lead, along with my Coast Guardsmen and the interagencies, an interagency response to address cleaning up oil spills or chemical spills. I'm also the Federal Maritime Security Coordinator for the port. It's like the police chief. I wish I'd like to have a badge, but they don't need one. But I have to implement the San Diego Area Maritime Security Plan. I work alongside the FBI, Border Patrol, Office of Field Operations, CBP, federal, state, and local to get it all done. We enforce physical security, protecting the bridges, the terminals, the general public. And then you mentioned my authorities go out to 200 nautical miles. Well, it's called the exclusive economic zone. So that's where our fishermen hang out. They go out there, they pull resources and bring them into the ports. So there's a lot of foreign countries out there that would love to come into our 200 nautical mile EEZ, exclusive economic zone, and take some of our resources. So we enforce that, and we make sure that they are not coming in, and they don't. And then, of course, the maritime borderline, which is we're in a fight every night, stopping drugs and smugglers coming through. We get them. We have sensors. We have a lot of high-tech stuff going on, but the game is changing. I think when the congressman was at the sector about a month ago, he goes, "What's keeping you up at night with this job?" And I said, we can deal with the drugs, we can deal with the migrants coming over, but we're starting to see on the border now an amassing of Middle Easterns from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, the list goes to Somalia. And what I fear is, ISIS has said they're going to infiltrate that vulnerability. These Middle Easterns are coming over, they're saying, hey, we're seeking asylum. And a lot of them are legit. They're in some really bad part, it's a tough part of the country these days, and they're just looking for a better way of life. But we know also that we have to take it serious that these terrorist organizations want to infiltrate that. There's some intelligence that shows that, and so it's this theory of convergence that the nefarious actors, terrorists, will converge with the smugglers to try to get in through the maritime side, and that's what's keeping me up at night. And although there's no intelligence to show that, I don't want to scare anybody. I'm just telling you that's what we're keeping a good eye out on. Our folks, our Coast Guardsmen, our men and women are out there every day and never letting their guard down, constantly reminding them to go that extra effort, to look just a little harder on these boats, question our folks, to run the information through the operations center to make sure that we are vetting and checking everyone to make sure that who's coming in is safe, at least on the maritime side. And then, of course, we have our first Fleet Week, where Admiral Tyson, 3rd Fleet Admiral, Vice Admiral, she said, hey, we're going to do a big parade of ships. They hadn't done that in San Diego in over 10 years. So they brought in tons of naval and even Coast Guard high-value assets. But what the public probably didn't know is that the Coast Guard locked down that port. We had everything from our Coast Guard tactical boats, our specialized forces, which are kind of special. They're not special operations forces, but they're similar to special ops, but on the maritime side, very, very tactical and with all kinds of neat gear and sensors and what have you. We had state and local. We had partnerships going with the FBI, standing up a command center to watch for intelligence as it was happening, because we didn't want to find if there was intelligence going on. We didn't want to find out about it afterwards. We wanted to find out about it when it was occurring so we could take action. And oh, by the way, Fleet Week, the parade of ships, was on September 10th, which was another reason why we were taking such strong measures. We even had the auxiliaries out on their jet skis, patrolling the little inner areas of the port, keeping an eye on things. So we were not going to let anything happen. I had aerial surveillance going, and we had a communications watch going, and we were talking to NCIS and various other intelligence agencies to make sure that port was locked down. But it went well. I slept well in that night, and because we were a little worried. Although there was no credible intelligence, but I can tell my folks when you hear there's no credible intelligence, that just means we don't know. Doesn't mean it's not there, it just means we don't know. And then the other hat I wear is I'm the officer in charge of marine inspections, kind of like a building inspector. We go on and we make, how a building inspector goes to make sure everything's to code. Well, foreign and domestic vessels coming in and out of the port have to meet federal regulations to even be able to transit in. We'll shut them down at the pier, or I'll give them a capital port order to stay outside the port until they comply with regs. If they meet a certain threat threshold, i.e. they're coming from a Middle Eastern country, I will hold them off the port. I will send a specialized team out to board them, to vet that entire cargo and to vet that team, the crew, to make sure that no one on there is nefarious before I let them in. So, and those are the authorities I have. And I know it irritates some of the shipping companies when I do that, but it's not just me doing it. It's all the sector commanders doing it to keep the country safe. And it's about regulation. So kind of the thing is, you think of search and rescue, but if you think about the Coast Guard, you want to think of it kind of in twos. Where we have the operational side, where we're fighting in wars. We're in the fight every night with drugs and migrants. We're doing all the operational stuff, cutters flying, tactical stuff, all that. But then on the other side is the regulatory side, and that's a team of Coast Guardsmen who know the law better than me. I have advisors that tell me about the law. And they're the ones making sure that all those boats that I just mentioned, all those commerce vessels in the terminals, like 10th Avenue and 24th in San Diego, meet federal regulations so all of us can remain safe. And of course, I'm also the SAR mission coordinator for the area, and we're pretty good at it. We are excellent at saving lives. Unfortunately, sometimes we're not as successful. A couple things just happened recently. 2 F-18s collided off of San Diego. One Marine was able to fly his aircraft back to North Island. The other ejected. And it went into the water, and we launched within minutes. The Navy also had a vessel in the area closer by, and they made it on scene and saved the downed Marine. But we were there, and we were going to make it happen. And I was amazed how fast the Navy responded. So again, it's a joint effort. We can't do it ourselves. But the U.S. Navy did a fantastic job of rescuing that downed Marine. And on an average day in the entire Coast Guard, we save 9 lives, and we assist at least 73 lives also. One other thing that's where the game changed, to mention where the game is changing a little bit. So I'd say about 2 months ago, we launched out on a search and rescue case that was in Mexican waters, a call for help. The Mexicans don't have the assets. We're about saving lives. We're also a humanitarian organization, and so we don't say, well, it's over the maritime line. we're not going to go help. Everybody gets our help. So we launched out. It was coordinated with the Mexican government. And about 10 miles offshore, it's pitch black. The sensors pick up an object out there. And they don't know what it is. And they're calling back, calling it a UFO. So I get the call. You know, they wake me up. Sir, we got a UFO. Mexican waters. And I said, well, what does it look like? And they said, we don't know. It's not an aircraft. It's something out here. It just flew under the aircraft, flew under the helicopter. And I said, so you cannot identify it? No, sir. I said, okay, then come back, because I don't know what's out there. So we had it analyzed, and we have varying opinions. It's not an alien UFO, by the way. But what we think has happened is, and the Air Force now has it, and they're looking at it. But we think that the cartels now have invested in some fairly large drones, and they are now running drugs. And if you look at this video pretty close, there's these bags hanging under the drone, and we estimate that this drone would be the size of a desk. And it went right under the aircraft. We have the video, and I'll know probably in about a month what exactly it was, because the Air Force is pretty good at analysis. But yeah, so that kind of gives you a flavor. If that thing had hit the aircraft, and they never would have seen it with their NVGs, their night vision goggles, they saw it with our sensors. It picked it up, and you know, gosh, I mean, I pray every day that our crews, air and surface, are kept safe. If that thing had hit the aircraft, it would probably be a different story. And so this is the stuff that our Coast Guardsmen, you know, the men and women in the Coast Guard are dealing with every day, is the unknown, the uncertainty. Drones are also being used by the drug runners now on the land side too, a lot smaller, but they're running this new stuff called fentanyl, which is a nasty, nasty drug that we're still just starting to understand. But if you touch it, it can be absorbed into your body pretty quick, and now you're going to the emergency room. So we're training our folks on how to deal with that, and that's a whole new ball game. But you know, the commandant, you know, I was just in D.C. last week, and the commandant said to us, you know, he laid out his new priorities for us. But I'll tell you, like Don here, you were on the Stratton, right, Don?
My grandson was.
Your grandson, did you go on board it?
Yeah.
Yes, you were. So this is our new national security cutter. We've been recapitalizing the Coast Guard now for about 15 years now. We have this, they're building number 9 right now. This thing is a game changer. The drug runners were beating us down off of South America, Ecuador, Guatemala, Colombia, beating us. I mean, if we didn't have they'd run right by us. There's a Coast Guard cutter, no big deal, because they're not going to catch us anyways. These national security cutters were designed to go in and retrieve intelligence, listen to conversations, pick up intelligence, and then react, respond. When the boats, when they pick up a drug boat, and these boats are moving at 35, 40, 45 knots, 4 or 5 engines on the back, and these folks are not messing around. Out the stern of the boat, before you used to have to come around, you'd lower the boat down, not anymore. Out of the stern of the boat, they open it up, fast boat comes out, and off they go. If the drug runners don't stop, and they typically don't, the boat comes up alongside, and they'll fire rounds across the bow. If they don't stop, the drug runners get hit with pepper ball, kind of like paint guns, boom, boom, boom in the chest. If that doesn't stop them, then they go in for the kill, not for them, but for their engines. And they'll shoot out all 5 engines with precision, and then once they stop, they're ours. And then it's amazing what we're getting off these folks. We're getting their cell phones, we're getting their testimonies, we're getting their GPS coordinates, and typically those coordinates lead to another bus. So pretty sophisticated time, and because of this Coast Guard cutter, and with all the technology on board, is allowing us to almost have success based on intelligence. It's all intelligence driven almost. 80% of it's intelligence driven these days, where before it was kind of a shot in the dark. All beyond what most folks think we do, which is search and rescue. But the commandant's been pretty clear on his priorities, especially with the recapitalization of the Coast Guard. We have all these new offshore patrol cutters coming, all these cool assets coming, all courtesy of the American taxpayer. But I can tell you, it's not money wasted, and these things are keeping the homeland safe. And so he told us A couple weeks ago when I was in DC, transnational organized crime networks, that's a priority. Securing the nation's borders, securing commerce, promoting cybersecurity, and then also now Congress is awarded $1 billion to get the first polar class cutter, the new modern cutter for the Arctic into the shipyards and get it built. They haven't awarded the contract yet, but that's coming. So, how do we do this? Every day, it's about, I mentioned earlier, leadership. Well, we start with core values of honor, respect, devotion to duty. I'll tell you, the line is long for joining the Coast Guard, and if you don't meet these criteria, we show you the gate pretty quick. We don't have time anymore to mess around. We're in some serious business, and the Coast Guardsmen have to be the very best, and they are. You know, I was asked by the same congressman, what fires me up about being sector commander. And, you know, we got cool assets, we've got, national security cutters, and, me at the sector, our sector has, the aircraft and the fast boats and this great training and all this, but what fires me up every day are the people. And I'm not just saying it because I'm the commanding officer, it's true. We have Coast Guard enlisted members, men and women, coming into the Coast Guard today with master's degrees, doctorate degrees. I'll give you another example. We had an Air Force Academy officer. She resigned her commission. Graduated from the Air Force Academy, because she wanted to be a rescue swimmer, an enlisted rescue swimmer, jump out of planes, Coast Guard aircraft in the Coast Guard. It's amazing what we're getting today. So the quality of Coast Guardsmen protecting your homeland and saving lives is absolutely the best I think the country could ask for. And it just keeps getting better. And so with that, I can continue to talk about my priorities and all that, but I think I've reached my limit. So I'm happy to take questions.